Everybody's like, Hannibal, is that guy from that movie that eats people? so, how many have you all ever studied the Urim and the Thummim in the Bible? A couple of weeks ago. Yeah, just last night. Have you? Yeah, they're stones, yeah. So that's interesting. Is that about the furthest extent you've studied it? There we go. Okay, so we're going to get to that. Wes is going to help us tonight. So, so yes, we will get there tonight. We're in sort of a drudgery part of some of the things that are like, oh, Chad, just read through it and let's go. And then we're going to get into some more interesting parts. So tonight, what I thought would be interesting is we're going to start with a video which I have sped up to the speed to just get us through the building quickly. And thought this would be interesting. This is actual construction of the tabernacle. And so just to make sure everybody's back on par, remember the two pegs I talked about at the bottom of the post? And the posts are covered in what? Gold leaf, right? And so it gets inserted into the silver bases, and each of the posts gets placed in. It forms a wall system. The actual wall system has on the sides of it rings, and those rings have what are pole mounts, and those poles slide down the wall, and the poles are made out of what kind of wood? Acacia wood. And so the poles are made out of acacia wood, they're covered in gold, and they create the support system, and then on the interior wall there is a pole as well. Not so that you can get up from going to the bathroom, so it can actually hold the wall together. And so then the curtains get layered on top, and when the curtains get layered on top, they get put in actual segments. And you saw the one curtain on the bottom had the cherubim on it, and then as we layer the curtains, they get tied off down here to the bottom that we saw. The next piece is the outer wall. Is that you see the outer wall being formed. It each had its own post. On top of the post was a tack, and then it had an eyelet that the string would tie off to on both sides, and then they would mount a sheet in between each one of the posts to form the outer perimeter. And then you would have the gate or the entry piece here, which was different. These four sections of post would have a special curtain hung like you see here, and that would be an entryway into the inner courtyard. I want to stop it for just a second. Did you notice what was on the curtain entering into the courtyard? A picture of the sun. Isn't that kind of, it's like, well, that's kind of interesting. You know, what was one of the main bodies that God built in Genesis? What was one of the first things that he brought to life? So I think that's kind of interesting. And then you see the posts are mounted around the outside. So it's got a top rail on it essentially. Then you've got the altar, the wash basin, and then the 10 curtains that are draped over the tabernacle itself. And then the altar with the 4 horns, one on each corner. This is a illustration of what the altar would have looked like. Keep in mind the altar would have been raised off the ground just a little bit. It would have been raised off the ground so that you could have shoveled coals and fresh wood under it to actually trigger the fire. And then you had each one of the implements that went around it. This is the mesh grating that in the Bible it actually talks about them building. And that grating would exist underneath it, and the whole altar could actually be carried by them as well as they traveled. Remember, each one of the implements were made out of pure gold. And then this is a wash basin where they would actually, the priest would literally wash. And we're talking about a basin like this big around, sitting up on a stool. So think of a modern day fountain kind of thought. And that is where the, quote, holy water would be for the priest to cleanse themselves before they went into the sanctuary, not into the Holy of Holies. Obviously, this would be for the Holy of Holies as well, but it was made for anybody that had to serve. This is the golden lampstand. If you'll notice, it's got the buds on the bottom, and then what does it exemplify? What are the petals supposed to replicate? Almond blossoms. And so each one of the petals were an almond blossom petal that had been hammered out, and then you would fill the top of the lampstand, the menorah, as we know it in modern terms. The menorah would be filled with olive oil, and we're going to study the olive oil tonight. Hold on, Buck, let me get through because it's moving fast. And so each one of the snuffers and each one of the olive oil containers, they would be made out of pure gold. And the lampstand would weigh approximately 75 pounds is what the estimation is.
First, I thought you showed us a rendering of the future borders on.
Yes. This is the table of showbread. And so the table of showbread would be mounted and it would be layered in gold as well. It would have a lip around it, if you remember, a hand breadth width. And this is where the actual showbread would be brought in, and there would be 12 cakes of bread which would be brought in and placed on the table. And that would be representative of each of the tribes of Israel. And then it would be eaten each week and then replenished by Israel, and then add a few of the implements that were there. Notice they did not have sporks. It was really... This is the actual altar of incense that is sitting in front of the Holy of Holies. And so we would take coals off of the fire outside. We would bring coals into this and dump the coals from the altar outside into the altar of incense. And then we would burn special incense on this as a sweet smell to God. And that's where the incense would be burned here. And that, if you can imagine with this structure, that smoke would fill that room that you were in. And again, you would have poles that they would carry this stuff from place to place. Notice it has 4 horns on it as well, just like the altar outside had. Now, this is the Ark of the Covenant beginning to be reconstructed. And so you see the 4 sides and the bottom come in. Remember that we think of the Ark of the Covenant. Let me stop it for just a second. When you think of the Ark of the Covenant, what in your mind makes up the Ark of the Covenant? A box, the cherubim, what else? Okay, so that's exactly how I thought of it too. That was my immediate kind of, it's a box with a lid on it, to, boil it down. Actually, the Ark of the Testimony is the box that we're looking at here, and then it had an atonement cover that went on top of it. 2 distinctly different things, but that were connected to one another in transport and why it was sitting in the Holy of Holies. So remember, there's a border around the top. We've got the rings. Do the acacia posts stay in or get taken out? Stay in at all times. And so this stays in, and then on top of this, inside of it, the 10 Commandments were placed, as well as Aaron's staff, and then a jar of manna. But then you have the cherubim on top with their wings touching one another, and then the presence of God existed either in between there or on top of it. It didn't distinctly say, but you're going to see in this rendering where the artist says that he sees the presence of God in the center of the cherub wings. Okay? I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. All right. Was that helpful or interesting? Yes, it is. Yes, the link to that is in here, building of the tabernacle. And so you can see that there. And I'm not sure why this is not formatting properly, but let me shut the... Yes, Foster. The menorah is used in that celebration, but Hanukkah is actually considered by Jewish people to be the festival of lights. And the festival of lights associated with it, the Maccabees, from whenever they led a revolt. And the festival of lights, they also had large in the temple complex in Herod's temple. Remember we talked about there was the tabernacle, then there was the temple of Solomon, and then we had the temple of Ezra, and then Herod expanded that last temple before it was destroyed by the Romans. And inside Herod's temple, there were huge lights mounted on pedestals way up in the air, and they would light that to light the courtyard of the tabernacle area during the time of Herod. Y'all follow me there, or did I lose anybody? We good? Okay. All right. So the older I get, the bigger the letters need to get. So let's see. It's still not formatting right, so we're just going to roll with it like it is. Last week, I didn't correct this. Last week, we actually studied the tabernacle, and we began to look into that, but we also studied a little bit more about the Sabbath. This week, we're going to move forward with the tabernacle, but we're going to study something that is probably one of the weirdest things that I've seen in the Bible in a long time outside of the Nephilim and the Rephaim, if you remember that conversation. That was weird, right? I mean, that was like on a whole other level. By the way, Dr. Heiser, who wrote the Divine Council and did a lot of that work that we studied together, he is suffering from a very aggressive cancer, and he has asked for everyone to be praying for him. He is really, really, really sick. He has been able to get food again for the first time, day before yesterday, I think it was, but he'd been like 12 weeks on an intravenous feeding tube. So he's really, really struggling and could use prayer. So we just looked at the building of the tabernacle, but we're going to rejoin. Now keep in mind that God is making, where we're at still, is we're still in the design phase. God is still giving Moses the designs of how the tabernacle should be built. And Moses is at the feet of God on Mount Sinai in the cloud, receiving this information. And tonight, I think you'll actually see that Moses is like literally looking into heaven and seeing an example of the tabernacle. Because God says, draw it or make it like I showed you. So literally we get an imagery of like Moses got a glimpse into heaven and saw the heavenly tabernacle, and we're seeing like a small piece of it. So, and the tabernacle, chapter 26, verse 1, in the tabernacle you will make 10 curtains. Now these curtains are going to be laying on top of one another, and we're going to see that they're stacked. You will make them of fine twisted linen and blue and purple and crimson yarns. How do you make colored cloth? Dye? How do you dye it in the desert? Blood, dirt. There's actually you can actually go in and dye it with dirt, and it creates a special color. Purple is derived from the actual crushing of a snail shell, and you get that if you actually look inside, you can actually get purple from there. So, and if you remember the tzitzit that I gave you all in one of our Bible studies, remember the tassels? Those were originally made in Jerusalem, and they are made from the dye of that snail, and that's how they're stained, and that's their whole kind of mechanism to make that happen. So purple is royal. The length of one curtain, do you remember how many a cubit is? How many inches? 18. Approximately 18 inches. The length of the one curtain will be 28 cubits, and the width will be 4 cubits for one curtain. So is this one giant sheet of material? No, it's sewn sheets. Why? Think for a moment and logically and just practically. Why? Because of the looms? Because of the work that they had to do to make something? Have you ever seen a hand loom and what it takes to spin cotton and to make a hand loom? So they've got these curtains being produced, and you will make loops of blue, verse 4, and you will make loops of blue on the edge of the one curtain, and at the end in the set, and you will do so on the edge of the end curtain in the second set. So that curtain, how far did that curtain have to go? From one side of the tabernacle to the other. You see that? And so there's not like one just big banner curtain. We've got to sew multiple curtains together. And on the ends, we're going to put loops because we're going to tie those loops to the ground. Why? So they don't blow away. You know, it's like my daddy when he took us camping at Wind Creek that time. He parked us right up there by the dumpster, and he put that tent up there, and that old tent he put up, and we was in that 70-model Ford F-150. It was solid metal, had a 3-speed on the column, had more rust than it did paint. And Daddy pulled up there in that truck, and we were camping, and he put them poles up to hold that tent up. Well, that night at Wind Creek, a storm come through, and guess what happened to that good old tent? It fell down on top of us in the tent. And all I remember from that trip, and I don't remember much from my childhood, but I remember my daddy cussing like a sailor. And I remember all him doing is piling that tent up like a hobo sack and deadlifting that thing in the back of that Ford truck. And, well, what? And it hit the bed of that Ford truck. And he said, get in the truck. We going home. And so everybody, camping was over real fast. Also, the only campsite at that time was the one right next to the dumpster. So guess what happened all night? You heard the dumpster hit all night. So that was the end of camping real fast like. So we won't talk about how I broke Kelly Joe camping in a tent. That's a story for another time. Yes, what? Oh, dadgummit. I'm going to have to do my trick, I think. It's not updating. Thank you, Wyatt. Hold on, y'all. All right, we'll just convert over here. Here we go. All right. So, verse 9, and you will join 5 curtains together and 6 curtains together, and you will fold double the 6th curtain at the front of the tent. Whew, man. And you will make 50 loops on the edge of the one curtain at the end of the first set and 50 loops on the edge of the curtain in the second set. What are these people doing in the desert all week? Sewing curtains. Sewing curtains. And you will make 50 bronze clasps. What else are they doing? Working with metal. They're literally like got this production facility to make this thing. And you will make 50 bronze clasps, and you will make the clasps in loops and join the tent so that it will be one. And the surplus in the curtains of the tent will be an overhang off the sides. The surplus half curtain will hang over the back of the tabernacle as well, and a cubit from one side and a cubit on the other side, and surplus of the length of the curtains of the tent will be hung over the sides of the tabernacle to cover it. Holy cow, literally like you're going down to the minute detail. He has got this. Verse 14. And you will make a covering for the tent of red dyed ram skin and a covering of fine leather to go above. How are we going to dye it red? Blood. Probably blood. We just skinned the animal. We got natural dye. 15. And you will make frames for the tabernacle of acacia wood as uprights. Remember those posts? And the length of the frame will be 10 cubits. And the width of one will be 1.5 cubits. You reckon them posts were heavy? No, sir. And so you will make 2 pegs for the one frame for joining each to another, and likewise for all the frames of the tabernacle. Yes, Wyatt? I'm colorblind, man. I'm not sure, but I'll go with it, whatever you say. And you will make the frames of the tabernacle, verse 18, with 20 frames for the south side, that end wall. Remember that? The north wall is where we walk in. The end wall is solid because that's where the Holy of Holies is. And verse 19, and you will make 40 silver bases under the 20 frames. It's a giant Lego set with 2 bases under the one frame for its 2 pegs and 2 bases under the next frame for its 2 pegs. And for the second side of the tabernacle, the north side, there will be 20 frames, and there will be 40 silver bases with 2 bases under the one frame and 2 bases under the next frame. You got it? It's a huge, huge thing we're looking at here. And verse 22, for the rear of the tabernacle on the west, you will make 6 frames, and you will make 2 frames for the tabernacle corners at the rear. If you noticed in that 3D rendering, at the corners to connect the walls to one another, they had little capstone like that were L-shaped. And that's what connected the south, north, and the end wall to one another so they wouldn't tip over from one another. Verse 24, they will be double at the bottom, and they will be completely together on its top to the one ring. It will be likewise for the 2 of them. They will be for the 2 corners, 25, And there will be 8 frames, and they're silver bases, 16 bases, with 2 bases under the one frame and 2 bases under the next frame. Jeepers peepers. Do you think we can remake the tabernacle today? With this detailed of design, we could. Absolutely. Yes. Verse 26, you will make 5 bars of acacia wood for the frames on the one side of the tabernacle. Remember the bars that we saw inserted? And 5 bars for the frames on the second side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the frames on the side of the tabernacle at the rear on the west end where the Holy of Holies is. And the bar in the middle, in the midst of the frames, will run from end to end. Had to be a really, really long bar. They're connecting the complete structure to one another. And you will overlay the frames with gold, and you will make their rings of gold for the bars, and you will overlay the bars with gold, and you will erect the tabernacle according to this plan which you have been shown on the mountain. Jeepers. I mean, is he doing this from memory? Probably not. He's probably got clay tablets. Just so you know, whenever you would Xerox copy something in this time period, you would Xerox copy it on a wooden tablet that clay was pushed on top of. And so you would typically have like tablet after tablet after tablet of clay, and you could write in the clay or draw in the clay. And then what you could do is you could come in and you could erase it, right? You could wet it and you could erase it. And then you'd have, it's like an Etch-a-Sketch, you could start over. So that's how that typically would be done in this. And so 31, and you will make a curtain of blue and purple and crimson yarns, finely twisted linen. Don't do this cheaply now. Y'all stay on top of it. The work of a skilled craftsman, and he will make it with cherubim. That's interesting. What stood outside the Garden of Eden? Do you see the imagery that we're given? And you will put in 4 acacia pillars overlaid with gold, and with their gold hooks on 4 silver bases, 33. And you will put the curtain under the clasp, and you will bring the ark of the testimony there inside the curtain, and the curtain will separate for you between the holy and the most holy place. So whenever, if you can in your mind's eye, whenever you enter the sanctuary, there's curtains from the outside. You enter the sanctuary, gold all around you, lampstand, showbread, table of incense, the lampstands glowing with olive oil light, and then there's, behind the altar of incense, there's curtains of cherubim to enter the Holy of Holies. Y'all got it? And you will, I'm sorry, what? 34, thank you. And you will put the atonement cover. Oh, no, I didn't make it that far. 32. And you will put it 4 acacia pillars overlaid with gold, 33. And you will make the curtain under the glass, and you will bring the ark of the testimony there inside the curtain. That's the box, notice. And the curtain will separate for you between the holy and the most holy place. What kind of shoes do I wear in the most holy place? None. Okay? If you ever thought about that before, these priests are barefoot. Okay? When they walk in that area, they're barefoot. Yes, Foster? Yes. In the New Testament, they talked about people touching in the Old Testament, they talked about people touching the ark as it crossed the river to stabilize it, and it did kill them. But they would be, obviously, when God said to move, you got to grab the poles. You don't touch the ark. You grab the poles and you touch. I don't know. I don't know. Never heard that one. I don't know. So 34, and you will put the atonement cover with the cherubim cover on the ark of the testimony in the holy place, and you will place the table outside the curtain and the lampstand opposite the table on the south side of the tabernacle. You got it? You got one on the north wall, one on the south wall, and you will put the table on the north side. So it tells you exactly where you got to put these implements. And you will make for the entrance of the tent a screen of blue and purple and crimson yarn, finely twisted linen. This is the curtain between the outside wall going into the courtyard area. And you will make for the screen 5 acacia pillars, and you will overlay them with gold, with their gold hooks, and you will cast them from 5 bronze bases. So here we are. We got this huge tabernacle. Why build a tabernacle in y'all's mind? Why does God need this? He's got a mountain. You know what I mean? Ma'am? Make it accessible, yes. For the priest, but also for the people. What kind of culture did they come from? What did their gods in Egypt have? Temples. What do the gods in Mesopotamia have? Temples. Ziggurats. You say, ziggurats, how do you know that? Well, look at Babylon. What happened at Babel? They were building a temple, a ziggurat, to the heavens so that they could be like God. A stair-stepped building. Think of a pyramid but with no top on it, just keeping pyramids stacking on top of one another. So Exodus 27. And you will make the altar outside in the courtyard of acacia wood. They must have had like pine trees here. They must have had lots of acacia wood. 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. The altar will be square and its height will be 3 cubits. 3 cubits. How high? 3 times 18. 54 inches tall. Okay? So here we are with this. And you will make its horns on its 4 corners. Its horns will be of one piece with it, and you will overlay it with bronze. And you will make its pots for removing its fat-soaked ashes, and its shovels, and its sprinkling bowls, and its forks, and its fire pans. You will make all of its equipment with bronze, and you will make it for it a grating, a work of bronze network. And you will make on the network 4 bronze rings on its 4 ends so that it can be toted. And you will put it under the ledge of the altar. Below the network will be up to the middle of the altar. So the meshing had some system that would push it up into the... So if the altar was 4.5 foot tall, the altar would, let's say, be raised off the ground. The meshing would actually go up inside the altar so that whenever you laid the meat, it wouldn't go all the way to the bottom of the altar. The meat would like get it halfway. Does that make sense? Why would I do that? Because I don't want the priest to like lean over and fall in the washing machine. You see what I mean? So he's got the bronze grate is up here to where we can get to the meat that didn't completely incinerate. And you will make its pots for removing it, verse 4, and you will make for it grating, 6, and you will make poles for the altar, poles of acacia wood, and you will overlay them with bronze, and the poles will be put into the rings, and the poles will be on the 2 sides of the altar when carrying it. So that means what happens to the poles when you're not carrying it? They get taken out because you don't want to trip a priest while he's walking around the altar. They didn't have orange cones back then. And you will make it hollow with boards as it was shown you on the mountain, so they will do. Moses, you're going to oversee this project. Make sure that these craftsmen that I'm going to give you, make sure that they'll do that. Verse 9. You will make the courtyard of the tabernacle for the south side will be hangings for the courtyard of fine twisted linen, 100 cubits long for the one side. And its 20 pillars and their 20 bases will be bronze. The hooks of the pillars and their bands will be silver. Where are they getting all this gold, silver, and bronze from? They brought it with them from Egypt. And likewise, for the north side along the length will be hanging 100 cubits long. And it's 20 pillars, and their bases will be bronze. The hooks of the pillars and their bands will be silver. And the width of the courtyard from the west side will be hangings of 50 cubits, their 10 pillars and their 10 bases. So this is the end wall. So it's 100 cubits by 50 cubits. 100 cubits long, 50 cubits wide. And hanging for the shoulder, verse 14, will be 15 cubits with their 3 pillars and their 3 bases. Verse 15, and 15 cubits of hangings will be for the second shoulder. This is the front wall. So he's making a gap for the gate to enter. And those three bases, verse 16, and for the gate of the courtyard there will be a screen of 20 cubits of blue and purple and crimson yarns, finely twisted, the work of an embroiderer. How do you embroider in this time period? You're literally stitching, literally, with their four pillars and their four bases. All the pillars of the courtyard, verse 17, all around will be banded with silver, and their hooks banded. They're literally taking, think of a whiskey barrel band that's around it. They're banding these posts with silver bands, and that are attached to those silver bands, they will put silver hooks, and their bases will be bronze that these posts sit in. Verse 18, the length of the courtyard will be 100 cubits, and the width 50 cubits, and the height will be 5 cubits. So it's decent size. It's not just like gargantuan tall, but it's bigger. It's big enough that you can't see over it if you just stand next to it. Of finely twisted linen with their bronze bases. 19, bronze will be for all the equipment of the tabernacle and all its services and all its pegs and all the pegs of the courtyard. They're having to literally act like metallurgists, and they're literally melting down all this material and dipping these pieces in there. You get that? I mean, we're covering all this stuff with silver and bronze, and some of it with gold. And so this is where it starts to get weird. 20. And you will command the Israelites, Moses, this is God talking to Moses, and they will bring to you pure beaten olive oil for the light. Now, beaten olive oil, why beaten? What's it? Okay, so when we study New Testament, we typically believe olive oil, we're led from a processing mechanism. We've studied this together. Do y'all remember? Olive oil is achieved through what kind of method? The press. The Gethsemane garden is the press. And so the way that traditional methods of extracting olive oil is that you would take the first pressing of the oil, there would be a large log, literally, and if you remember, that large log would have attached to it a massive rock, and at the bottom of that rock would be a hewn basin that we would put baskets of olives. And those olives would be gathered, if you can imagine a basket about this big around, and those olives would be placed in that basket, and then they would be stacked on top of one another. And once you stack those baskets of olives on top of one another, we would take that rock and we would cantilever it down, and we would hang on it, and it would press that first pressing of oil out of those olives, because an olive is hard to begin with. And what it'll do is crack that olive, and you'll get that oil, and then it would flow out of the bottom of that basin into an olive oil. And that first catching of the oil is referred to as what kind of olive oil? Virgin oil. Okay? Now, this is different though. He's not telling us to press the oil. He's telling us to beat the oil. So here's what's interesting. As I studied this, one of the things I was like, wow, what's the difference between the two? The beating of the olive gives you 2 drops of olive oil. So whenever you crack that first olive with a implement, whether it be a club, a hammer, whatever it is I'm beating these olives with, that first cracking gives you typically 2 drops of olive oil. Okay, just think for just a second. We're filling that menorah up day and night. It never goes out. And we're using olive oil to fill that lamp. What in the world? How many olives have we got to crack? Do what? And that's the next question. Where do all the olives come from? Do what? Amazon ain't delivering them. You know, I don't know what you're thinking, but they're having to get all this materials and stuff. Think about the amount of olive for 2 drops that you would have to process to get enough oil to fuel these lamps. That's a lot of olive oil, right? So the beaten olive oil in verse 20 to cause a lamp to burn continually. Kelly has a little, I bought her a replica of a Jewish lamp. I should have brought it. It fits in the palm of your hand, literally, and it's got a wick out of the top of it, and it is a true life-size scale replica of a lamp that they would have had at this time period. And you would fill it too with olive oil, but not the, the 2 count, not the first kind, right? You get the old junky stuff. It's going to smoke a little more, whatever, so you get that stuff. Verse 21, in the tent of assembly outside the curtain that is before the testimony, Aaron and his sons will arrange it. Now you notice who was not there. No girls. They couldn't tell him, I want it on that wall. No, put it on that wall. Oh, Aaron, God went ahead and took care of that. And God said, this one goes here and this one goes here, and don't move it. Aaron, just tell your wife to get on. And so Aaron, here he is. Aaron is who? Which Aaron are we dealing with? Moses' older brother by how many years? 3-year-old brother. 3-year older brother. Somebody, yes, what? Maybe so. Yeah, maybe so. Maybe everybody had to break a basket of olives every day. We don't know how they processed it all. In the tent of assembly outside, Aaron and his sons will arrange it from evening until morning before Yahweh as a lasting statute throughout their generations for the Israelites. What did God just establish for the tabernacle? The priesthood. He just ordered the priesthood. He just said Aaron is going to be the priest. Who is the priest in the tabernacle today? Jesus. Okay, very good. So we keep going. Well, hold on. Who's this Aaron guy? We've talked a lot about Aaron. Let's see exactly what kind of guy this Aaron was. So we're going to go to number 17, and we're going to see another conversation about this, okay? So we're going to number 17. Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the Israelites and take from among them 12 staffs. A staff from each family from among all the elders, according to their family's household. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and give you what are we talking about here? There's a dispute about who's going to be the priest. God's fixing to settle it. Write the name of each man on his staff. Now, did he have a Sharpie? No. They write the name on the staff. Maybe they carved it in. They wrote the name, however, and they put it on the staff. And the name of Aaron on the staff of the Levi tribe. Because one staff is for the head of each of their families. Y'all got what's going on here? Go pick your stick out, write your name on it, and then bring it to Moses. Verse 4, you must then put them in the tent of assembly before the testimony where I meet with you. What is he talking about? Tent of assembly is what? The tabernacle. And it will happen, the man whom I will choose, his staff will blossom, and so I will rid from upon myself the grumbling of the Israelites who are grumbling against you, Moses. You see that? They're arguing about it with one another. Moses spoke to the Israelites, and all their leaders gave him a staff for each leader. Y'all go pick the best looking staff you can get. One from each of their families, 12 staffs, and the staff of Aaron was in the midst of their tribes. And Moses put the staff before Yahweh in the tent of testimony. What's the only problem? What do we know about Aaron's staff? What else can it do? Turn into a snake. Yes, Foster. No, not yet. Not yet. Not in this case. Then verse 8, pardon me. Then the next day, so he left them there overnight, propped up against the wall in the tabernacle. Moses went into the tent of the testimony, and behold, the staff of Aaron for the house of Levi blossomed and put forth a flower and produced blossoms, and it produced almonds overnight. That's some growing. You talking about miracle grow? That's the first miracle grow right there, right? And now, then Moses brought out to all the Israelites, all the staff. Can you see it? He's got 12 staffs in his hand. He comes walking out the door, pushing the curtain back. He walks backwards out of the curtain, turns around. All of them's out there in the courtyard, the elders and everybody. And he's got them staves bundled up like this. One of them, you can't hide it, it's got a blossom on it. Whose is that? He starts dropping them out one by one. It ain't him. It ain't Judah. It ain't Reuben. It ain't Simeon. And he gets that final, everybody already knows, oh, it's Aaron's. And so here he is. He shows him that staff. It's Aaron, and this matter has been settled. Quit bickering. And then verse 10, and Yahweh said to Moses, bring back the staff of Aaron before the testimony as a guard and sign for the children of rebellion. That's interesting. A rebellion? That's the Israelites. That's the ones that are grumbling, the ones that constantly keep coming back to God. They're rebellious against God. And let them finish their grumblings before me and not die. Why don't y'all get this off your chest? Just go ahead and get all of it out. Because if you keep on, I'm going to kill you. So Moses did just as Yahweh commanded him, so he did. And the Israelites said to Moses, saying, look, we will die. We will be destroyed. All of us will perish. Anyone who approaches the tabernacle of Yahweh will die. Then stay out. Essentially what he's saying is, it's not your place anymore. You grumbling people. The priest will do the service. And I've told you that Aaron of the tribe of Levi will be the priest. Are we done with this issue? That's kind of what he's settling here. It's like Daddy stepping in. So now, we go back. Yahweh said to Aaron, your sons and your family with you will bear the guilt of the sanctuary. The guilt of the sanctuary? The guilt of the sanctuary? What's the guilt of the sanctuary? You mess up the way this is supposed to be done, it's on your head. Nobody else. You don't get to put it off on anybody else. Aaron, if you don't do this job the right way, it is your fault and your fault alone. The buck stops with you. And you will bear the guilt of the sanctuary, and you and your sons with you will bear the guilt of your priesthood. He had 4 sons. Moreover, bring your brothers with you, the tribe of Levi, the tribe of your father, that they may be joined to you and minister to you, you and your sons with you before the tent of the testimony. So go get all the other boys that you grew up with, your cousins. You see that? And bring them with you because they're going to help you do all this work. Why do we need help doing all this work? Who's going to tote the wood? Who's going to bring in the holy water? Who's going to keep the curtains clean? You see what I mean? It's a full-time job here. They will keep, verse 3, they will keep your responsibility and the responsibility of all the tent. Only they may not come near the vessels of the sanctuary and the altar, so both you and they will not die. So if cousin Bubba comes up and thinks he's going to sneak in and throw a piece of meat on the altar, I'm going to smoke him and you're going to die too because of it. You and your 4 sons are the only ones that are supposed to be in here doing this service. You got me, Aaron? Verse 5, you will keep the responsibility of the sanctuary and the altar, and there will no longer be wrath on the Israelites. Why are you doing this? To make sure that it's done well. This is verse 18, or chapter 18 in Numbers. Verse 6, look, I myself have chosen your brothers the Levites from the midst of the children. They are a gift to you given from Yahweh to perform the work of the tent of assembly. But you with your sons will keep the priesthood to perform your priestly duties for everything at the altar and for the area behind the curtain. I give you the priesthood as a gift, but the stranger who approaches will be put to death. Now, this is what a priest would likely look like. Let me zoom out on this. Can't zoom out enough. So this is what a priest would typically look like. We've got the gold band of his turban around his head. Then we've got mounted here on his chest is the ephod. And the name of each one of the tribes would be engraved inside the stone of the ephod. And then on the shoulder of the priest would be a stone as well, connecting it. Think about it like pearl buttons on a denim shirt. You know, you'd have that. And then underneath here, you would have a pouch behind the ephod. Then you would have your tunic that was sewn. And at the bottom of the tunic, you would have bells. And then you would have pomegranates mounted in between these bells. Now, there's different reasons for this that people have surmised over the years, and that the priest would also be barefoot. But we've actually heard it taught that, hey, the reason there are bells is that we can hear the guy inside the Holy of Holies, and if he falls to death because he did something wrong, who would have died inside the Holy of Holies? Aaron would have. You know, we'd tie a string to him, and if the bells quit moving, you know, he's dead. So we can yank him out. So here we are at this now priest, and let me blow this up a little more. And now we're able to see some of the actions that Aaron and his children have to do. We're back in Exodus now in chapter 28. I know this is a little boring, but we're fixing to get to the weird part. Verse 1, and bring near to you Aaron your brother and his sons with him from the midst of the Israelites to serve as priests. I want Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, the sons of Aaron. 2 of those boys die pretty early on. And you will make holy garments for Aaron, your brother, for glory and for splendor. He's supposed to stand out above everybody else when he puts those garments on. Yes, Foster. Those were common names. Verse 3, and you will speak to all the skilled of heart, whom I have given a gift of skill, and they will make the garments of Aaron to consecrate him for his serving as my priest. And these are the garments that they will make: a breastpiece and an ephod and a robe and a tunic of specially woven fabric, a turban and a sash that'll go around, and they will make the holy garments of Aaron for Aaron your brother and for his sons to serve as priests for me. How many ephods were there? You got it? Okay? Unless they traded out ephods, and I kind of get the image here that they made these garments for all of them, because this was sort of, you're going into a special place, and why would one not have what the other has? And they will take, verse 5, and they will take the gold and the blue and the purple and the crimson and the fine linen, and they will make the ephod of gold, blue, purple, and crimson, and finely twisted linen, the work of a skilled craftsman. It will have 2 joining shoulder pieces at its 2 edges so that it can be fastened, probably some kind of leather loop. You sewed in the stone, and probably a leather loop got put around it, kind of like an overall kind of class. And it will have 2 joining shoulder pieces at its 2 edges. And the waistband of the ephod, he has a belt which is on it that will tie it around him so it won't flop when he walks. Okay? So it allows him to tie it up like an apron. And you will take 2 onyx stones and engrave on them the name of all the Israelites. You mean 1,000,000? No, the 12 tribes. He would engrave within those stones the Israelites with 6 of their names on the one stone and 6 on the second, according to their genealogy, as a work of skilled craftsmen. With the seal engraving, you will engrave on the 2 stones the names of the Israelites. You will make them mounted in gold filigree. Filigree, if it wasn't a term I was used to, maybe if you sew, you'll know what it is, but it's like a raised, like you're drawing with gold, like a gold pencil almost, that's laying down a 3D image. It's really nice and it stands out. It's not like an embossing. Yes, Foster? Yes, when we went there. That's correct. That was part of, if you learn later on, you don't turn your back. You're always facing. So the 2 onyx stones, 12, and you will set the 2 stones on the ephod's shoulder pieces as stones of remembrance for the Israelites, and Aaron will bear their names before Yahweh on his 2 shoulder pieces for remembrance. So he is bearing symbolically the 12 tribes on his shoulders. Do you see that? And you will make gold filigree settings, and you will make 2 braided chains of pure gold, ornamental cord work, and you will put the chains of the ornament cords on the filigree settings, and you will make a breastpiece of judgment, a work of skilled craftsmen, and you will make it like the work of the ephod. You will make it gold and blue and purple and crimson and finely twisted linen, and it will be squared, doubled a span its length and a span its width. So it's going to be exactly square on the chest, and you will fill it with stones mounting. There will be 4 rows of 3, and there will be carnelian, topaz, emerald. The second will be mashite, a sapphire, and a moonstone, and the third will be jacinth and agate and amethyst. And the 4th row is turquoise and an onyx and a jasper. And their settings will be woven with gold, is how they'll be attached to that ephod. And the stones will be according to the names of the Israelites, 12 according to their names, with seal engravings, just like on the onyx stone of the sleeve. Each according to its name will be the 12 tribes. And you will make, verse 22, of the breastpiece braided chains that are going to hold this heavy thing up, a work of pure gold, ornamental cord. And you will make on the breastpiece 2 gold rings, like overall rings, and you will put the 2 rings on the 2 edges of the breastpiece of those 12 stones. Okay, so those 2 rings are going to hold that up. And you will put the 2 gold ornament cords on the 2 rings of the edge of the breastpiece, 25, and you will put the 2 ends of the 2 ornament cords on the 2 filigree settings, and you will put them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod at the front of it. Do we know how we're supposed to make this? Down to the minute detail. And you will make 2 gold rings, and you will place them on the 2 ends of the breast pieces, and on its edge of the ephod, 27. And you will make 2 rings and put them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod, and the front seams around the waistband of the ephod. And you'll tie the breast piece by its rings to the rings of the ephod with a blue cord to the blue waistband, A to B and B to C, and Aaron will bear the names of the Israelites, verse 29, and the breastpiece of judgment on his heart. That's key. He will bear them on his heart. He will be before them. Remember in Hebrews when it talks about Jesus, we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness. That's the kind of thing that we're seeing here, is that Aaron is before them. And this is where the weird enters. And Aaron will bear the names of the priests when he comes to the sanctuary for a remembrance before Yahweh continually. And you will put the Urim and the Thummim on the breastpiece of the judgment. That thing's hanging here. You're going to put these 2 things inside of here, and they will be on the heart of Aaron when he comes before Yahweh. And Aaron will bear judgment of his heart, on his heart before Yahweh. What is this? It is mentioned throughout our Bible, actually, the Urim and the Thummim. Now, do we know exactly what it is? No, we don't know 100%. The clearest text that we have to this is a text from Samuel, and Samuel actually talks about the white stone, the Thummim. So throughout Scripture from this time forward, which is the first time this is mentioned, we see indications of this being used to determine the will of God. Now, the best that we can surmise, because we don't have these as artifacts, and we don't have anywhere else that it's described in detail, are that this is a white stone and a black stone that was placed inside of a pouch underneath the ephod of the priest, Aaron, and his sons. And whenever you needed to determine what God wanted about a particular matter, you would take the pouch out that held the Urim and the Thummim, and you would feel down in there, grab those 2 pieces of stone, and you would bring them out in your hand as the priest, and depending on how they were facing would be the answer from God. Yeah. And you're like, seriously? This is in our Bible? 1 Samuel 14, verse 41 through 43. Then Saul said to Yahweh, the God of Israel, render a decision. This is the point where Saul's made the stupid declaration of whoever's eaten, they're the ones that are going to be killed. Do y'all know that story? At one point, there's a battle coming. Everybody's starving. Saul's told everybody, don't you dare eat. And whoever does eat, they will be killed. Jonathan, his son, was away from him whenever the command was made. Jonathan ate some honey because he was starving. They come back together. And when they come back together, they realize the blessing of God is not upon them. And Saul comes to say, what's going on? Let God render his judgment as to who this is, not knowing that it's his own son that he's about to issue a death warrant to. And he says, Jonathan and Saul were chosen by lot. That word is and Thummim that we have from Exodus. And the people went out. Then Saul said, let them cast lot between me and my son Jonathan. And Jonathan was chosen from the 2 stones from behind the ephod. Isn't that freaky? You say, Chad, that's not how it really. Somehow these stones, as best we can gather, were used to render the decisions of God. Now, you say, well, that's kind of weird. Is it really? What happened in the New Testament that should be startling to you in regards to this, kind of similar to the casting of lots? It was when the new disciple was chosen. You say, you got to be kidding me. Read your New Testament. Whenever Judas hung himself and died, it says that they were in the upper room waiting, and it says that they were trying to decide who of the remaining would fill the 12th spot. And what did it say they did? They cast lots to determine who was the 12th. And we don't know for sure. We don't know. Yeah. We don't know how all that works out. Based on New Testament, it appears to be a dice, essentially. But it's the same principle that we see here of you are asking God to reveal his will through some kind of, and that's exactly what somebody said earlier. Isn't that weird? I mean, that's just weird. I'm just going to say it out loud. It's not what we've been raised with in Feltboard Sunday School. Never in Feltboard Sunday School did anybody teach me about the Urim and the Thummim. That just wasn't there. Yes, Foster. They did cast lots on the boat for Jonah. That was dice. That was definitely dice. So we're not going to finish with this piece tonight because it's just reading more of that specifically. But we can't dodge the weirdness. We don't know exactly. There are multiple. If you want to, you can actually go in and you can actually look for the. I didn't save the search, but there you can go in and actually see each of those places where those stones are used in the Old Testament. They're scattered throughout your Old Testament. I would encourage you to go look at those because it's really interesting how the will of God is determined in those situations. So that's like weird.